Hello, I'm Faith, and welcome to Faith's Take, where I talk about anything and everything that I find interesting. And boy, does that actually, that little catchphrase really come in handy today, because we're going to be talking, as you probably saw in the title, about Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers, the movie. What the heck is happening? Okay, so I had a rough night's sleep last night. Really, really bad. So I've been in and out of napping, all day, right? So finally I'm, scrolling through Twitter, groggy still. And I start seeing these things of Roger Rabbit. Everyone's like, look, a shot of Roger Rabbit. And I'm like, what is this from? And so I did a little digging, kind of by accident, and I ended up finding that Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, the movie's trailer, is out. And like many Disney remake, reboots, whatever you want to call them, I was like, first of all, it would have been cool if it was a series. Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, I remember more as a kid than DuckTales, the original DuckTales. I was kind of on the tail end of the Disney Afternoon generation. I remember Goof Troop. I remember Tailspin pretty well. And then Chip 'n Dale was the one that I liked. For an adventure show, that was my choice over DuckTales, right? So when they're like, we're going to do a remake of it, and it's going to be a movie, I was already like, okay, we'll see. And it's gonna be John Mulaney and Andy Samberg as Chip 'n Dale, and I'm like, okay. Love John Mulaney's work. Him as Spider-Ham, my favorite of the Into the Spider-Verse spiders. When there's a stiff competition in that movie, think he's great. Don't know as much about Andy Samberg. Sure, he's lovely, but I was like, okay. Corey Burton, Tress MacNeille both do really good jobs with all their characters in that show, and so, and Jim Cummings as Monterey Jack, you had all these great voices. So all we know for sure, John Mulaney is Chip, Andy Samberg is Dale, Corey Burton as Zipper. Tress MacNeille is listed in the cast on Wikipedia, but it does not say who she is. So I don't know if she is Gadget or if it's going to be somebody else. Okay, totally new people as Chip and Dale. Zipper's going to be the same. Maybe Gadget is the same, which I would give them props for sure. It looks like clearly, and I believe I could tell from the trailer as well, that it is not Jim Cummings as Monterey Jack. I wasn't listening close enough, so I don't know who it is of this list. The thing for me, because we're just going to get real quick into the stuff that I'm like, and then we're going to get into the stuff that I'm like, the heck? What? So, as soon as Chip opened his mouth, I was like, ugh.
To many more seasons of the Rescue Rangers.
Again, I like John Mulaney. I like his work. I think he's very funny. But I was just like, that voice doesn't fit that character design. Same thing with Dale with Andy Samberg.
We were living the dream, dancing the Roger Rabbit with Roger Rabbit.
Little odd. Little odd. The voices so far are the point of this, where I am like, we'll see. They could be great. Like I said, I already like John Mulaney as a voice actor. I don't know if I've heard Andy Samberg voice act in anything off the top of my head. Oh, he's Johnny in the Hotel Transylvania movie, so I know him from that at least. Fair enough. So he can voice act too. It's just, it's very odd. Just these choices for these characters. And that they decided not to do any pitch shifting at all, not to do that kind of that chipmunk effect at all, is very interesting, because clearly you can have movies where you use it and it works, because while I'm not saying the Alvin and the Chipmunks movies are good by any stretch, they made bank. So there's not really a problem about making money and getting butts in the seats, even if you pitch shift the voices. And there they hired celebrities and pitch shifted them anyway, which I'm like, okay, I guess. But let's get into the actual trailer itself. Voices aside, let's talk about story, let's talk about atmosphere, let's talk about just the world building, So everyone's starting to post those pictures of Roger Rabbit and even My Little Pony, even cats, and I'm like, what is happening? All legitimate shots from this trailer. So it opens, I'm gonna go back shot by shot a little bit. If I had known it was gonna be like this, I would have done a reaction to it, but I didn't. So it starts with this, Hollywood, hey, they were legends, their show was so successful, they were so well known, they were top into the charts, all right? They are treating the rescue, instead of it being the Rescue Rangers are this real organization, I assume that's what this would be. in this film, the Rescue Rangers is a show, like within the movie. You know, Chip, Dale, all of them are actors in this franchise. Okay, so they're real. They are not the only ones that are real. This movie does go full Roger Rabbit. It's like Roger Rabbit, it's like the Muppets, where no one's questioning it. It from what I can see, Detective Pikachu, all those movies that do that. Thank God they're not aliens, they're not weird, like, you know, like I think in Alvin and the Chipmunks, that's weird, like they're not, chipmunks don't talk other than them, so stuff like that, they're not going that route. Or like the Smurfs, where they find a portal, you know, they're like, hey, 2 more seasons of our show, and everyone's like, yeah, and there's so much merch, and like, they're just successful actors. The one of the things I could absolutely give them in this is originality, given the franchise they're tackling, because they so easily, you know, what I thought it was going to be, just be another adventure movie. And then, though, you risk, can we have the spark the original show had? Can we actually bring that back to life in a live action setting? Because that was the other thing too, they always said the movie was going to be live action. This is where it gets super interesting, but now you don't have that risk of trying to capture magic and not having it happen in quite the same way if you make the context completely different. And they are in 2D. Now, I believe it is 2D put over, mapped over CGI frames. Like, you know the short Paper Man? It's like that. At least that's what it looks like to me. Which, honestly, I'm okay with, because I'm just shocked they did 2D at all. As soon as they said live action or live action hybrid, I'm like, so it's the Smurfs, so it's Alvin and the Chipmunks, and they're going to be CG and really stand out and not look, you know, G-Force, like all those movies that are terrible and it doesn't look good, right? So the fact that they do any 2D at all, I was already like, ding! They're in this club. This is where a lot of the shots come from. You have Paula Abdul with Scat Cat from the famous music video, and everyone was like, ah! You have the 3 Little Pigs from the Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf short. Roger Rabbit is there, like all the classics. And so then it's like, and then it all went crashing down, where it's like the show ends, they end up breaking up, and it becomes The Muppets 2011. Like, you know, a story that you've seen 1,000 times, which is fine. Again, if you do it well or uniquely, it's fine. And again, I think we haven't had a truly good Roger Rabbit-esque movie and style probably since Roger Rabbit itself. Well, this actually looks interesting, which is why I was shocked. I'm already like, dang, and they're 2D. Are they going to be 2D the whole time? What's going to happen, right? So you see, like, you know, then it's show ends, cut to 30 years later. It cuts. Dale is suddenly CG, and I'm like, what? Is it supposed to be that, like, time? Does that happen to cartoons when they get old? I was like, what is happening? And then came one of these things where I'm like, that's brilliant.
You look different.
Hey, it's no secret I had the CGI surgery done.
That adds such lore, such a layer to the world building, that then when cartoons like the Smurfs, Alvin and the Chipmunks, in our world, are suddenly CGI in their movies, it's a surgery the characters can get. They can go from being 2D to 3D. And it adds such a dichotomy between the characters, because I'm sure it's going to be that they have very different personalities and very different effects on, it affected them differently how the show ended in the 30-year gap, right? Because that's, you know, that's the cliche. But to visualize it with Dale still being 2D through the rest of the trailer, so I assume the film, and Dale being CG, I was like, that's brilliant. Like, to that way you can get the CG, you get the producers excited that you get to do the CG, whatever, but you're still giving the audience 2D, and you're giving it a reason. You know, it's surgery, that's why this is possible. It shows the difference in the two of them and how they accepted the fate of the show and their franchise. And I'm like, that is actually really smart. That genuinely impressed me. I was like, dang, like that is when I was like, okay, I'm into this. And it looks good. Like, the CG looks well done. The lighting's very good. But again, that just shows, I wonder how many other characters may we see that's a classic character that is now in CG, or people are dancing in that club with that later in the movie are CG, to show that more people are getting this. It's like a cosmetic surgery. Ignore that, it's the wind coming through. I have the little kitchen deck open for the dogs. The one thing where I'm like, they always have to do this, is they made it that Monterey Jack is basically like a crack addict, but it's to cheese. And I get that in the show he kind of was addicted to it or whatever. That's fine. But they're gonna be that he's like down on his luck because he's addicted to it, like, you know, in a seedy way. And I'm like, okay, fine. But because they do that almost every movie like this, they've got to be sure one is like super down on his luck in like the worst possible way. And I'm like, okay, like that's just, you know, a cliche that I'm tired of, I guess. That's not even necessarily on this movie's fault. I'm just like, eh. This is another interesting thing. From the beginning, when you see them meet up again after Dale's had the surgery or whatever, he is still in his iconic Hawaiian shirt the whole time. There's a gag in the trailer where they're like, okay, we need disguises. Chip, go get a disguise. And he accidentally there's like an Indiana Jones booth at the con, and he ends up dressing in his old outfit. But he's not until that point, once the 30 years passes. So again, it shows that Dale is still like living the hype of the show, where like Chip is not. Is this the most original movie ever? No, obviously not. There's a lot of cliches in it. But again, just the idea of like the CGI having a purpose and making sense in the script and not just being like half-assed and thrown in there. And then again, to show that Dale like won't move on, like he's fully still embracing the Hollywood and the glitz and getting the surgeries and stuff. I think that's great. So it actually goes from being the whole washed up Hollywood that needs to get together again, like in The Muppets 2011 and many other things, to being that they actually have to get back together to rescue the world in real life. And I'm like, that is really smart. So they took what could have been the best of like two different films and put them together, where it's like Roger Rabbit-esque, but there's a purpose to it, and then just doing a straight up Rescue Rangers movie, but adding that as like that's the conflict in the Roger Rabbit-esque world. There's a shot of Scrooge McDuck in a pot of gold coins. Everyone was very excited about that on Twitter. It's a montage of like action shots. There's Aladdin. I must have blinked during that shot. That was really quick. They are riding the Friendship is Magic My Little Ponies. There's some kind of what looks like it's supposed to be, I assume, some kind of terrible monster, because it has like a CGI cat head. It looks like Wreck-It Ralph's arm, a gun for the other arm. Its chest is 2D, and so I assume that's going to be some kind of really bad monster abomination thing. You see the logo come in, really cool. They end up in like a seedy part of town, and you see two of the cats from Cats, like the 2019 Cats, flailing about in the garbage. Delicious, like perfect, amazing, let's go. And again, they have it explained, why is this kind of a weird seedy part? The uncanny valley. They don't say the words, but that's what Chip is describing, is the uncanny valley, where things almost looked human but not quite, and it's very video game looking.
This place looks weird.
Remember that animation style where everything looked real but nothing looked right?
I am shockingly stoked for this movie. I cannot believe that when it was first announced, and then announced who the voices were going to be, I was like, okay, like I don't have anything against these guys. Like I said, I like them. They've done good voice acting in the past. I was just like, but is Chip and Dale? Like, is that gonna work? You know, that's the only main thing that I'm like, I'm sure they'll do a good job, but will they be Chip and Dale? You know, is the thing, because their voices are so iconic, even in like the classic cartoons, let alone the actual Rescue Rangers show. But just as a whole, it's fascinating. Just the fact that they went the Roger Rabbit route. There will be a Rescue Rangers plot in it, in a film that is, instead of just doing it fully cartoon, they do it in real life. So the stakes, I'm sure, are going to be really high, or they're going to try to make it seem at least as if they're high. The CG additions make sense. The reason they're apart, that's just a classic cliche. But like the thing that got me was like, damn, if they're going to make one of the characters CG, they gave it a freaking reason. And like, that is what blew me away. And just the fact that even that much thought was put into this, I was like, okay, I see you, Disney Plus. What are you doing here? And just the fact that it visualizes the difference in Chip and Dale and how they've taken everything in the last 30 years, I just think that's really smart. And of course, they put in a lot of fun little things for us, like the Roger Rabbit cameo, the Cats shot for those of us that actually saw it, and loved it for how terrible it was. The action shots do look fun. The action shots look like a fun movie, and the effects look good. Like I said, both the 2D, which what I assume again are 2D overlays over CG versus the actual CG versus the lighting versus the live action effects, all look like they work together really well, especially for this being a streaming only movie now, which they had to have known would be streaming only for quite a while given the state of everything. I would assume this was planned to be streaming for a while, and it clearly had a budget. As someone who loves the original Chip and Dale, someone who loves Roger Rabbit and the concept of living in that world, that sort of a world, and the fact that they added lore and world building that you see even in the trailer that explains the choices that they've made, I shockingly am really excited for this. Like, because I saw it and I was just like, how do I feel about this? First off, I'm really confused, but then I'm just like, no, this seems like it'll be really, really good. And then it's taking some cliches and ideas that already existed, but making them their own, making them work, stacking them together in a way that makes sense. Like, even just the first half before it's like, oh, they actually have to save the world, I was like, what's happened in the last 30 years? Like, I was getting so into, like, I want to see what's gone on, and I want to see more of this Roger Rabbit cartoons are real, and we treat them as normal world. So I had to get on here and talk about this with you guys, because I'm watching this, like, again, groggy in bed, and I'm like, what is happening? I'm like, am I still asleep? What is happening? So I'm actually really jazzed for this. So it's in only 3 months, 3 months away. I will absolutely have to watch it, and for better or worse, I'm sure do a review for you guys. Now that I've done, this is the first trailer reaction I've done in who knows how friggin' long, or trailer review, whatever. If you're gonna do Chip and Dale, both the originality of the way they're taking it, plus the way they're taking the cliches and ideas and layering them and building the lore, I'm very, very excited for that. Like, this seems like a way to really make something out of this. And who knows, if it's popular enough, maybe they could get sequels where they are doing the rescue stuff that you see in the later part of the movie. But I am very interested to see how this one turns out. Of all the Disney Plus and Disney movies coming out recently, this is the one where I saw the trailer and I was like, damn, like, what's happening here, you know? So I'm actually really excited. I can't believe that, because when it got announced, I was like, oh, you're gonna ruin the Rescue Rangers, and now I'm like, you're adding lore to the Rescue Rangers? And like, I'm very excited to see how this goes down. And if you're not gonna start out with it being like the Rescue Rangers were a real team making it, you know, it was a TV show in their world, I'm just excited to see what they do with it, and I'm hoping it lives up to the interest piquingness of this trailer. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope we have a cool discussion about this, maybe even on the next stream or something, because I would love to know your guys' thoughts on this, especially anyone that's like in the age of like my age, a little older, who kind of grew up with the Rescue Rangers. What do you think about this? Or just people that love this type of like Roger Rabbit-esque world. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later.